Want to have your own business but don't want to start from scratch? Franchising might be the answer you're looking for. Welcome to the Level Up with Nick Lopez show, the show that brings you thought leaders in business, franchising, and high-performance personal development. Whether you're a buyer, seller, franchisee, franchisor, or a consultant, find everything you need to know about franchising right here. Own a business without the pain and financial losses that come with creating it. Find the time, freedom, and financial independence you can have through entrepreneurship. Learn how franchising can help you get there. Listen up and get ready for another episode of the Level Up with Nick Lopez show.
Welcome to the Level Up show with Nick Lopez, where we have the absolute pleasure of learning from thought leaders in business, franchising, and high performance personal development. Today's guest goes without exception. He's had plenty of experience on the franchisor side, which gives him some pretty unique context in the world of franchising. If that wasn't enough, he's also been a franchise owner as well. He specializes in operations, having worn the chief operating officer hat throughout his career. But one thing I really appreciate about this guest is he understands that nothing gets done in a business without sales. There's a beautiful dance between operations and sales, and I am most certainly looking forward to diving into this conversation and learning more about his perspective from an operations and sales standpoint, specifically in the world of franchising. He is currently a franchise consultant with one of the world's largest franchise consulting firms in France, and he's headquartered in one of my personal favorite cities in Las Vegas. Thomas Walker, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. Happy to be here. I appreciate that kind intro. You are too kind.
It's well deserved. My goodness. So franchising, right? It's this special world where the current CEO and president there at the International Franchise Association is coined as being one of the greatest wealth generating platforms in the world. I couldn't agree anymore, right? It clearly gives folks a leg into the world of entrepreneurship. And so you've helped folks navigate this world of over 4,000 brands in the franchise space. You've helped them understand how does business and just general skill sets needed in lifestyle match up with all these brands to help them become successful franchise owners. Clearly, we're going to dive into that, but I want to get started with asking you a question related to how you got started in franchising, because most folks don't quite understand that anything, just about anything, as long as it's ethical, makes money, and is legal, it can be franchised. So that's much more than just McDonald's or Burger King. Something even like a plumbing company or a painting business can be franchised. And so, franchising has this unique way of finding people. You don't necessarily say, I'm going to be in franchising. It's an afterthought, frankly. And so, Thomas, how did franchising find you?
That's a good question, and that's exactly how it worked for me. I didn't so much find franchising as franchising found me. I was a young man in my teens, actually, when I got my first franchising job. I was in Reno, Nevada. I worked for a gentleman by the name of Scott Hickey. Great guy, great golfer. He was a great guy to work for, and I just kind of stumbled into his franchise golf and tennis franchise and applied for a job, not knowing that he was the type of guy that hired young people, male, female, didn't really matter. As long as you could show up for work on time, do a good job, do what was asked, he was there. He was kind enough to work around our school schedules. I say our because again, there was a lot of us athletes at the time. I remember there was tennis players that worked there. There was golfers. There was football players. There was just a lot of different young people that he gave jobs to. So that was my first introduction. I didn't know it was a franchise when I went in there. Had no idea. Honestly, didn't really care. Was looking for a job that worked around my schedule. I had things I was doing in high school and sports I was playing, and demands and hours that I was available and not available, and he worked around all of that stuff. So that worked out perfect for me. I worked for him for years, uh, off and on. There were times where I didn't work the summers, or I didn't work a certain season, but he always found a spot when I did need a job. So I was able to kind of come and go along with other people. It wasn't necessarily special for me. It was special because of him, I would say, more so than anything else. And so that left an impression. I thought, this is pretty cool. This is a pretty cool guy. I liked the opportunity. And so that's really my introduction into franchising. Obviously, I learned more about franchising as the years went on. He was very open and sharing not just about his business, but how he got into it, and what it meant to him, and what it was doing for his family and his expansion plans, and all of that stuff was my first introduction to it. So I would have to give him a lot of credit for kind of biting me with the franchise bug, if you will.
Mhm. How long did you work there for? I know it's kind of off and on and depending on the
Yeah.
season.
Well, parts of college too, through college. So probably on and off for 6 years. Yeah, high school and then through college. And ultimately, I ended up moving to Las Vegas from Reno, and working at the Nevada Bob's corporate headquarters, which was based in Las Vegas. And so when I came down here, I came to Nevada Bob's, applied for a job. They heard that I worked up in Reno. They called up there, got a nice reference. I got the job, no questions asked. I kind of worked my way through and in that franchise at the franchisor level. And that was my first exposure working for the franchisor, where I saw the desire and the emphasis put on selling franchises, building relationships, key relationships with vendors, preferred vendors, all of that side of it opened up. International franchising. Nevada Bob's was a franchise at the time, and still, that has international legs. So that was my first introduction to really thinking past Nevada, past the U.S. as a business that could enter the globe as a whole. So it was pretty cool for me. Pretty cool. I was
Yeah.
very, very, very fortunate.
Yeah, well, anybody that plays golf has to be a great guy, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
my goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, what a fun business, right? And in franchising, you talk about anything being franchised, golf. Yeah, what a great specialty there. It sounds like that was a great pit stop and really just a segue into franchising. So, along that vein, you went from Reno to Vegas. Where did you work on the franchisor side? Was it just those two stops, or
No,
anywhere else?
so franchising is a smaller community than you may think. I mean, it's kind of like Reno. It's the biggest little thing, right? Reno's the biggest little city, and franchising is maybe the biggest little thing in business. I don't know. I'm not going to make up a phrase here, but it turns out it's a small community once you get into it. And so if you do the right things and you listen, as I tried to do to Scott and other mentors that I had, you get recruited, right? So I got recruited kind of when I got down to Vegas. Then I got recruited into GNC, which is General Nutrition Centers. I met the gentleman there, JJ Sorrenti, and he brought me into GNC from Nevada Bob's, and into Nevada Bob's as there was a purchase that went on, and that's a longer story. But the point is, as you meet these people, I think one of my best skills is listening to the right people at the right time. In general, not always, right? You can't get it right every time, but if you can get it right a lot of the time, or most of the time, even, it can be a big difference. So if you can stop and slow down long enough to recognize quality people when you're around them, maybe listen to them, take their advice, pay attention to what's going on, the path can be easier. I talk about getting debris off my runway so that my plane can fly. Well, that's exactly what I'm getting into.
So you spent plenty of time getting exposed in franchising. As you mentioned, it's a big space, but pretty close-knit group, and you navigate through on the franchisor side. You learn plenty about supplier relationships, franchise owner relationships, just franchising and the inner workings in general. And then you decide to become a franchise owner. What led to that? And can you share a little bit about what you did as a franchise owner?
Yeah, you're skipping a lot. A lot happened in between me getting into franchising and becoming a franchise owner. I'm a franchise owner now, right? At this, let's just say I'm middle aged. I'm not going to tell you how old I am because I'm definitely older than you are, but we'll just say I'm middle aged. So at this stage of the game and at this stage of my career, that's a position that I've long wanted to have, is to be in the franchisee position, right? And so now that I'm there, it's tremendous, and I have a position within this particular company that I own and run, where it's not necessarily that I get to do what I want when I want, all those things that you think and dream about as a kid, but I certainly have a lot more choice and a lot more freedom and a lot more options, right? And so I can spearhead and determine what direction the company goes, how fast we go there, how big it goes, all of those scalability issues that some people may not want, I cherish and I want and I love. And so that's been my dream. And so here we are. But there was a lot to get me here. There was a lot of people involved, along the way that I learned from. That's probably, again, I'll keep saying it. That's the number one thing is try to pay attention and recognize the mentors you have and the great advice you get along the way. I'm a compilation of a lot of different influences, right? So yes, I put in some work, and yes, I do my part, I think. But if you listen to all of that stuff, it's just I can't say enough about it. It's just so much easier. So between the people and the experiences, because I have worked outside of franchising, and I was successful there, and I enjoyed that, but I didn't enjoy it like I do franchising. I've had a lot of different roles in franchising, working either for franchisors, working for franchisees, loved it all. And I've only ever left positions, for corporate reasons. Sometimes corporations go in a different direction, or because I've been recruited somewhere else, or because the travel's too extensive, right? Sometimes in franchising, depending on the role, you can spend a significant amount of time on the road, right? It looks like that. So I've had roles as franchise coaches, as senior directors of franchising, where you're in charge of hundreds, if not thousands of stores across, 5, 6, 7, 10 states. And those are great jobs, and the money's great, and the people are great, and all of that stuff is great. The experiences are great. The only negative to that, in my opinion, would be, for my case, spending 48 out of 52 weeks a year on the road for 6 years straight. At that time, I was having kids with my wife. The kids were young. I was missing birthdays, Christmas, holidays, you name it. I missed first day of school, everything, for the first 5, 6 years of their life. So that got to a point where that wasn't really working for me. Why have kids if you can't be anywhere near them? And so we had to make some changes there. But that's not franchise's fault, right? That's a choice that we made to have kids, and a choice that I made to want to be around more than that job was allowing. So came back, got into corporate America, did that for a while. I'm not going to say I hated it, but I didn't love it, and got back into franchising as soon as my kids aged a little bit, and as soon as I could.
So you mentioned that you've had to do a tremendous amount of listening, and that's just a part of developing and adding skills. Are there any mentors that really stand out to you, and anyone in particular, and how did they make a big impact in your career from a franchise standpoint?
Yeah, so the listening thing I haven't always been a good listener. Okay. I was a young man with an enormous ego that I probably still, lug around today. So I didn't always listen the way that I did in my late 20s and thereafter. But in the beginning, I certainly, would call out Scott Hickey. Like I mentioned, he was one of the first, if not the first. Well, he was the first person in franchising that really introduced me to it. JJ Sorrenti was the one who recruited me out of Nevada Bob's, and brought me into GNC. Those two are going to be the most influential in my franchise life from a mentor standpoint. But then on the other hand, I've been afforded some pretty high level positions in franchising and had the opportunity to work with some people, right, that actually reported to me that I respect and admire and think the world of, and learned from them also. So it's not always top down to me. Sometimes it's up, so the listening can go both ways. And I would call out, Michelle Popelka and Nathan Millhouse and some other folks that I've worked with. I'm sure I'm leaving some people out. You're making me feel like some sort of, award acceptance speech here, but there's definitely people on both ends of it that I've become better for knowing. So I by no means take all the credit.
Right. Yeah. And clearly, humility is such an important part of high performance, no matter what the industry is. Right. But
Sure.
Business in general requires so much humility. It's a people business, right? That's how business is done, at least until technology and AI take over. But
Let's hope not. It served me well, right? And like I said in the beginning, I wasn't always this guy that looked at it that way. In the beginning, I was very different. But you get older, you learn some things. You take some time to, as I say, not question the gift horse, just ride it, right? Sometimes you get a gift horse and maybe don't question the hell out of it, just ride the thing, right? And that's what I try to do, is recognize opportunity, not overthink it, accept it, be appreciative, and off we go. So like they say, if you can surround yourself with good people, top, lateral, below, doesn't matter. Things are easier, things are better. You can get a lot more done. So there was a time where it was important to be one of the smart guys in the room and know as much as I could possibly know about every possible thing, because I didn't want to be left behind or didn't want to miss out or not know something. That's not critical for me anymore. Now I want to know people that know the things I don't know, and they can handle the things that I don't know. And that's allowed me to scale. That is probably the number one difference between me now and maybe 20, 30 years ago is I want to I don't necessarily want to be the smartest guy in the room. I would rather be in a room full of people that are a lot smarter than me. That's a good room.
That's a healthy position to be in. Yeah.
That's a good room.
I can most certainly relate to that. I've been a part of some groups where that wasn't the case, and I don't want to do anything else but run. Yeah. So you definitely, it's always great to feel small, and and you're speaking in the context of having the correct posture in those moments or around those individuals where there's not a need for establishing what but rather being a sponge. And I'm thinking a lot about just business in general, whether you're an employee working up the corporate ladder or you're a franchise owner, there are mentors within the franchise system. That's the greatest thing about franchising is the collective talents and experience that can be shared, and you really miss out on that without humility. And so, we talk so much about humility and coachability, just in general. And, I think that is probably the single most telling characteristic of how successful you'll be, and the speed at which you'll be successful in the leaps that you make. Your ability to level up, right, is your ability to be humble and take that posture. So clearly your career has been, I'm sure it wasn't perfect, right?
No, I would not say perfect, no.
And so just taking that humble posture throughout your career, clearly that has been at the forefront of how you have had success in your career. And really appreciate you sharing that, because it is the core of business. It's the core of being on the franchisor side, being on the franchisee side, just business ownership, entrepreneurship in general. Again, business is all about people, And
I agree.
Humility is key in doing business effectively, and is a secret that you are clearly sharing here. Although it seems so obvious, you're giving a testament to the fact that, hey, look, I wasn't always as humble as I am now, and something you've had to fail forward with, and
You put it. Yes.
really appreciate you giving that testament, because it's paramount in franchising. And so, clearly you've had this career not planned, but you received you received the franchise bug, and I really wanted to hear from you. Your background as a chief operating officer. Give some context here. I can speak to what I know, and it's our business has really changed when we started implementing a system called Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And Gino Wickman, wrote a book called Traction. Highly recommend it. But it gives you a process to build a business and gain traction. And a big part of that is having a visionary and an integrator. A visionary more so wearing the CEO hat, and the integrator wearing the COO hat. And together, that partnership within an organization creates tremendous leadership for the traction that the business obtains. And so that synergy between the CEO and the COO is paramount. And, I've really appreciated that being implemented at Lime. And it's not easy to find for me, I test very high on the visionary and integrator hats. So, I had to give one of those hats away, but the area where I really loved it, and where my skill sets are, that I've doubled down on, is more the CEO, the visionary side. But I absolutely love the integration side. I had to let go of the vine and really hand that over to our VP of operations. But it wasn't easy finding the right fit, right? It took some work, and there's this synergy between or amongst the leadership team. And so the right folks have to be on the bus, of course. And so, but once it gets right and there is traction there, or as Gino Wickman calls it, rocket fuel, that's what's produced between that synergy for an organization. It's really something special. And so I wanted to get some of your perspective on, how you worked your way into that COO hat. And can you tell us a little bit about, from your operations standpoint, just some nuggets of wisdom, and what your experiences was like as a COO?
That's a good question, because it was a little bit different. So I reached out to one of my headhunters, and I said, listen, this is the field that I want to get into. It's kind of like when I look for a house, I go into a neighborhood and decide what neighborhood I want to move into, and then find a house there, right? So I picked an industry which was medical sales. It's big. I could go in there. I could start at hopefully a little bit above the bottom, maybe the bottom of the middle, the top of the bottom, and kind of work my way up. I did not go in thinking, well, I'm going to be the CEO of a medical manufacturing company, because how the hell am I qualified for that, right? Other than I do understand sales, I understand business, I understand people, and it turns out that's a lot of it, right? So I went in, I interviewed with the owner and founder. He mentioned that he had a couple other candidates for the vice president of the sales department. And so he said he was going to make a decision in the next week or so. It was here in Vegas. And I said, okay, this was on a Tuesday. So I went back in on Thursday in person, which is different. This was, not that long ago, 7 years ago, 7 years ago. And I just asked him, hey, have you made a decision? And he said, no, I haven't. And I said, why not? And he said, well, I can't get a hold of this guy, and I've tried to been scheduling with this other guy. And I said, well, if, people don't have time for you, that's got to tell you something. And so we just had a conversation, and a couple comments later, like, it takes no talent to be on time. And if people don't have time for the interview, things like that. He said, maybe you're the right fit. I said, I think I am. And I'll tell you what, I'll do you a favor. You hire me and I will contact the others and let them know that they're not the right people. And so that's how I got that job, right? I was referred by a headhunter. And then I just kind of went in and made myself known. And then you've got to go for what you want sometimes. So that's kind of how that started. I started out just over the sales department. And before, he immediately wanted to bring in salespeople to hire and start selling and all of the stuff. And I said, well, before we do that, I'd like a month or two to understand the product because again, I don't know anything about the equipment that we were selling, and I mean nothing. Right? I don't know medical sales or didn't. So I took some time to understand it, and I said I want to sell it myself, understand exactly how hard it is to sell. I want to do some market research, find out what we can sell it for, if we're at the right price point, all of that fun stuff. So I did that, reset the pricing. I reset the pricing, and we brought in a couple people. And it's a long story, but the end of the story is within 6 months, I had moved into the COO position. I developed a process or a plan for outside salespeople as opposed to inside salespeople, and using chiropractors to really promote the product, and then pursuing other verticals. Upon my arrival, we only sold it in the chiropractic offices. And I was able to open up some other venues like tanning salons and other things that just hadn't been considered before. And 4, 5, 6x the sales of the company previous to my existence. So that was a fun place. And I found out or renewed my love for sales. I had forgotten how much I like to sell. And I love selling high ticket items. These were medical beds that were $95,000 a piece. So it's not like we were selling something cheap and easy, and you have to deal with a lot of compliance and some other things and trademarks and all this fun stuff. But once you get past all of that and you just get into the sales of it, if you can figure out how to help your client use the product and affect their clients, then the sales get easy, right? And so the same thing works now for me within franchising. I don't just sell franchises like yours. Right. I specialize in emerging brands, which is why I'm here today, because that's what you are. You're an emerging brand. But as a broker, I do have the opportunity to sell other franchises, but that's not really all that I do or all that we do here. The other thing that we do is we provide what I have created and nicknamed the Flip program. Right. And I wasn't going to talk about this because I don't want a bunch of people stealing it, but you're a nice kid, so I'm going to tell you anyway. So Flip is franchise life improvement programs, and it's where we take different things and we offer those to franchisees after they've purchased the franchise, in addition to what you, the franchisor, are doing. We also offer it to franchisors, as you know, to ensure that vendors are staying on top of things and offering you the best prices. So we're out there negotiating on franchisee, on franchisor behalf, but without the restraints of just your franchise system. So I can come in and say, listen, I've got 300 franchisors that comprise X number of franchisees. What does the deal look like at that number versus any other conversation that's happening? So it's just a multiplier of what way back in the day with Scott and JJ and back 30 years ago, what I learned about the value that you as a franchisor try to bring to the franchisees. And so we want to be a tool not only to sell franchises for Lime, but then to bring you the best programs to offer your franchises, right? You're going to do that because you have to. You're contractually obligated to do that. I'm not, but we do it anyway, and we can do it at a larger scale. Then I bring that benefit to you. Everybody wins.
Absolutely. And, it should be about getting it right, not being right.
Sure.
And that is the core of being a great franchisor. Again, let me say that again. It's about getting it right, not being right.
Yeah.
And when it comes to outside vendors, from a paint standpoint, we have national suppliers that, make up most of our gross margin. Paint supplies, of course, right? We're putting a lot of paint onto surfaces. But there are other services like maybe it's a technology platform, or the ability to receive reviews, or a KPI dashboard. A lot of technology there that can bring value to an entire organization that might not be implementing it. And it could be a substitute, right? I clearly just gave an example of an opportunity, but you could be substituting an existing partnership or service or widget, whatever it may be. There's a lot that goes into running a business successfully nationally. And a very practical example would be, let's say that the organization doesn't do marketing in-house, they outsource it. So, an outside marketing vendor would be pretty important. Another easy example would be an apparel company, right? And so all of these different vendors provide value to a network. And clearly, if you're able to bring in substitutes that are at a better price, if it's just about getting it right, not being right on the franchisor's part or any one particular franchise owner, right? If it's at the end of the day going to save folks money and improve the bottom line, and it meets all the needs and wants of the system, then it's an improvement, and that's the right answer. And so outside of the change that it creates in the network, it's not easy to unplug an outlet and plug it right back in. Generally, when you unplug a vendor, there's a lot of work that goes into that, and effectively implementing it throughout the organization, that creates change, and there's appropriate processes for implementing that. But on the front end, the due diligence, it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. So Thomas, I think that that's a wonderful value add that it just shows how much you care about what you do and how much you genuinely do enjoy franchising. You're finding ways to bring folks value after you've worked with them to find the right franchise fit for them. And I'm sure franchisors appreciate it. And, depending on the particular brand and in partnership, but, if it's a brand that wants to get it right and not be right, why not?
Yeah, all you can do is bring opportunity. It's up to you guys as franchisors to figure out the right ones for you. But yeah, it's about choice. I'm a big believer in choice, and that's why money matters, because money buys choice. And if you can then have money and make proper choices, then it's great to be rich. The rich people that complain generally can't make a good decision, or they struggle to make choices, which nobody wants to hear about, right? Nobody wants to hear the rich guy or gal complaining about how hard it is to have money. That's not the challenge. The challenge is make a good decision, right? I've spent a lot of time with a lot of wealthy people, because in order to buy franchises, you have to be somewhat successful, because they're not free. So everyone that I've ever dealt with that's looking to buy a franchise has had success somewhere else, right? That's just an absolute part of it. They have to have the financial wherewithal to do this. And so they've made choices that have put them in a position to where now they can go buy a business, which is, for the most part, one of the top 3 purchases that anybody's going to make. You've got your home, right? Or multiple homes, maybe some other large asset, but then your business is going to be in the top 1, 2, 3 somewhere. For most people that I've dealt with, the business is a large expense. Not everybody. Some, it's a hobby. That's a different conversation altogether. Because generally, I believe franchising should be a lifestyle, not a hobby. But if you are getting into franchising as a hobby, that's okay. We just need to know that up front so we can get you into the right one. Right? Most franchises don't want you to buy them as a hobby.
So much wisdom that you're stating here. I hope it isn't overlooked, but you can clearly see where the operations and the appreciation for sales come together in Thomas Walker. There's a ton I don't know about you, but I'm glad I just learned. The work that you did with the organization that you were working with to 5x, 6x their revenue in an operations role. I mean, my goodness, your aptitude for business and creating value is incredible. So again, thank you, Thomas, for being on the show and sharing this wisdom. But as you were mentioning, this is one of the top 3 purchases in somebody's life. It's a very important decision, and you should know up front, hey, what is the lifestyle that I want? Is it a hobby? Will it be a lifestyle? And what are my interests and skills? And that is ultimately the lens that you're helping provide to somebody as they're navigating these 4,000 plus brands in franchising to ultimately help them become an entrepreneur. And as we just covered, you're able to then provide additional value to not only them, but their fellow peers within a franchise system. And so you've talked to me about something that I want to transition into. You've talked about this concept of, shark real estate or being a shark realtor.
You like that one, huh?
What do you mean by that?
So when people contact me, the first thing they'll ask is, "What's the best franchise?" That's almost everybody's first and favorite question. And I don't answer that because it's different for everybody, and nobody loves that answer when they first hear it. But after I explain it, and I use the term, shark realtor to explain it to them. So what that means is most people have seen the show Shark Tank and have heard of that, and most people have dealt with a realtor in their life at some point, right? Especially the people that I'm dealing with. Again, these are successful people that have bought things before, and so these are not foreign terms to them. And so I combine the two to explain what we do, in that we will go out and find the proper emerging brand for you, or the brand that we think is best, after a extensive interview process takes place, which covers, you talked about, there's a lot of different categories, not just Burger King, McDonald's, but there's cleaning, and there's financial services, and food and beverage, and it's just, there's 30 or 40 different categories, and in each one of those categories there's 20 to 50 subcategories. So there is a ton of franchise opportunity out there that people don't know exists. So that's number one, why I can't tell you the perfect and best franchise, because I don't know what you're going to be into or interested in. Number two, it's a financial thing, right? The best one at 50,000 isn't the best one for the person who has 500,000 or 5 million. Their best, the answer to each of those people is different, because we're talking about different financial levels, and it just is what it is. Money matters. I'll say it again. Money matters. Now, the Shark Realtor, the real estate part of that, is our firm. We will go out and find you the franchise and present it to you free of charge. We don't charge for that. We don't charge anything, for the record, to our clients. That's the way it works on my end. Now, you as the client are the shark in my scenario. So you get to sit back, be presented, be pitched, and decide which one works for you and which one you are going to invest in, just like the sharks on the Shark Tank. If you don't like it for whatever reason, I'm not here to make you take a franchise. I'm here to find you the right house or the right franchise that fits your needs and fits your greed, right? There's need, there's greed, there's all these other things that go into it. I'm okay with people that just tell me out front, I'm greedy, I want to make money, I care about the ROI. Great. That's good to know. Some people, it's a religious thing. I want one that is based in this particular faith. Good to know, because that matters. I can't and won't work on Sundays. All of these different things are fine. Whatever your answers are, there are no wrong answers, because again, you're the shark. It's your money. It's your investment. So our job is just presentation. We want to give you the best options, and from there you move forward. Now, people then ask me, "What's your favorite franchise?" I don't answer that either, because it's different for me than it is for anyone else. I have favorites that I would like to have. Let's say, personally, if I win the lotto, I'm buying these 10 tomorrow, right? And I have a list of them. I have my favorites because I like the people that are in the franchise. I'll do podcasts for them, for example, right? Because I like the founder, I like the vision, I like the mission, I like what they're doing, I like their youth, I like their growth, I like that they know who they are, and I'm talking about you here, kid. I like what you guys are doing, and I like how you've mapped out who your target client is, right? Some franchises tell you everybody's a client. Not everybody's a client, okay? Not generally, for most businesses, not everybody's a client. You are unapologetic about, this is who we want to target, and that to me is a very, very good thing that I'm proud to tell a client about. Hey, listen, if you want to go somewhere with some clear vision, this is an area that I can put you in. And you've never thought about paying before. Did you wake up and think, I got to get a paying franchise? Probably not. But after we look at certain criteria that you've told me you want, this is what you're talking about. This is the company. So that's what I mean by a shark realtor, right? The client is the shark, we're the realtor. But that's the harmony that my company exists in. That's the universe that we operate in. Your decision, your money, our legwork, our presentation.
What a neat way to put it, right? I could imagine being a client, that would be exciting. I know the first time you put it toward me that way, I couldn't help but just smile. And, if I were working with you, that would be a pretty exciting experience, and
Right.
would make something that is just kind of ordinary, or, you go about buying things and whatnot. Obviously, this is a very important purchase, but gives that context and vision, makes it very practical, and by as a byproduct, it makes it pretty fun.
Well, people struggle, and it took me a minute to figure out that analogy, but that was a forever question. That's the first and a constant question. What do you do? How do you do what you do? What does it mean for me? And again, people that are looking for franchises know what Shark Tank is, and we've all thought about being in those chairs, right? And being presented to, well, that's what this is. And it's that, and it's real estate, because we don't charge fees up front. We don't have a retainer. There's not a 10, 20,000, all this other stuff. We do our work, and until there's a decision made, we don't see a penny. And even then, as you know, we're compensated by the franchise that the person chooses. So for me, it answers a lot of questions. What's in it? They want to know what's in it for me, what's my motivation, and how do I get paid? They want to know that. That's fair. I call them fair and reasonable questions. That's fair and reasonable. Fine. I'll tell you what, for me, what's my motivation and how I get paid. There you go. How are you going to service me? I'm going to tell you how I'm going to service you on a silver platter, right? And whose decision is it? And when does it have to be made? That's a question you ask in the mirror. That's up to you.
Well said. And building on that concept of being a shark realtor, right? How do you help folks find franchises that they love?
Well, I find out what they love first. Again, here, I'll read you a couple of these. I've got them on my screen here. So, health services. As I go through this list, right, and I do this with my clients, we won't do it here for time restraints, but we go through a list, home improvement, landscaping, office services, painting, home improvement falls into that, pet services. As we say certain things, you can see in people's face, different emotions, like, and you can tell, like a comic, when you're losing the crowd, you're saying certain things and they're kind of over here, or you say pet services, or you say painting, or you say home improvement, or health services. What does that mean? Okay, well, that's a huge category, from servicing the elderly to children to fitness to all these different things. But it's hard to find people that say, I don't care about my health. Although there are some, or I don't care about anybody else's health. So that's a big one. So as we go through all these different categories, and waste management, okay, it doesn't sound exciting, but the person who says high ROI, that might be something they want to look into, because that's exactly what waste management is. And I don't mean Tony Soprano. I mean actual waste management. So we ask these questions, we get through all of that, and more often than not, there's an A-frame of people that come. They either come and they think they know which franchise they want, and they fall on one side. I want a blank, and they fill that in. Or they come and they say, I don't know what I want, but here's what I'd like to get out of it. This is the feeling that I want. This is the amount of time I want to put in. This is the investment I want to put in. This is the location that I want to be. And then we start asking questions like, well, what about growth? Do you only want to be in Las Vegas, or do you want to expand into Nevada? Do you want to go outside of Nevada? And oh, well, I didn't know I could do that. Yes, you can. So all of these questions unfold things that they may not even know, and they may not have thought about, but it's my job to get you to think about all of that stuff. Right.
Yeah. And you're getting somebody to think about, I'm sorry. You're getting somebody to think about all these concepts they've never considered.
Right.
And I could only imagine that a lot of folks lead with something based on their passion. I'll give a cliche of maybe fitness, right?
Right.
And that's a passion play. That's easy to fall into. I think that would be an easy idea off the top of your head. How do you balance that with the opposite side, where it could be waste management, or even painting, where you mentioned, hey, you're losing the crowd here. I don't think I've ever heard anyone get excited about owning a paint company. I had to sell myself on being the owner of a paint company. So, how does that work?
Yeah. So you want me to sell you your concept? Is that what I'm hearing here, Nick?
It's not a sexy business, let me tell you.
Yeah. So your concept is about what it generates and who it generates it from, in my opinion. So when people talk to me about, they're usually analytical people. They may or may not want to be on hands. They might want a general manager to come in, but they want very defined lines and they want to know who their audience is. That's you. They want small inventory. They don't want to deal with, a brick and mortar location, maybe. They don't want to deal with thousands of products. They don't want to deal with a ton of employees. They don't want to deal with a lot of red tape as far as licensing. Some of these things deal with chemicals, and some of these things deal with things where you need licenses and you need certain people. And now all of a sudden, your job pool and who you can hire gets limited and difficult. So, again, when I'm talking about your particular concept, if somebody comes to me and they're saying, okay, listen, I want to get into something and I don't care what it is, right? Because you're right. I haven't had anybody come and say, I have to have a paint franchise. That's true. I will admit that. But at the end of the conversation, they realize I do want the results of what this paint franchise yields. And that's a whole different thing. And so, again, a lot of these business owners, they come and they'll say up front, I don't know what I want. I don't necessarily care, but this is what I want it to feel like. This is how I want it to feel in the business. I don't care what the widget is. And that's what I call it. Then I ask them point blank, do you care what the widget is or not? Right. And depending on their answer, a bunch of things come in and out of play. If you care about the widget, again, I'll use food service. I have to have a QSR, quick service restaurant. That's what I want to do. I've always wanted to have a In-N-Out burger. Okay, they don't franchise, so you're out of luck. And now the conversation's over and you don't get what you want. So are you sure it has to be that one? Can it be a different burger? Well, I guess it could be, right? So even the ones that come in can end up going into something like your franchise. Plus, you're new, okay, and you're young. And I don't mean you personally, I mean your franchise. I should have clarified that earlier. You are young, but your franchise is young and falls into my category of emerging brands. And so when people ask me what's exciting, that gets mentioned. Emerging brands that are on the rise and are on a steep incline, that's exciting because you want to get into a brand that has a couple things for sure. Open territories, the ability to get in and kind of take over and play your own personal monopoly. Yes, established franchises are great, but can you get a territory? Do you want that territory? I have an issue right now with a franchisee that can't really expand. She's stuck where she is unless she wants to skip over 2 or 3 states. She doesn't really want to do that. And that's her choice. She's the shark. I can't make her open where she doesn't want to be. So it's either a different brand, right, in the area that she wants, or she skips states. That's it. That's it.
I can see the overlap with real estate, right? Where, hey, we want these type of schools. We need this many bedrooms, this sort of yard, yay or nay to a pool. And, it's really based on what's available in the market and budget and all those different factors. And, unless you're in the real estate market, you don't really know what's out there. And so when you mentioned Shark Realtor, it just really hit home. I appreciate you sharing that. But I want to move on here. Once somebody has become a franchise owner, what happens next?
Really, in most cases, that's where we, the broker, are out of the situation. The deal is done. They found the house, let's say, to take it back to the real estate. But because of the way that I consult with this, it's not really sales because there's no exchange of money between myself and the client, which is the definition of a sale, right? The exchange of money. But because I'm more of a consultant on the whole thing, I sell or consult for the franchise plus the additional franchises. So we always have conversations about, and I'm going to make up a term here, well, steal a term and repurpose it into franchising. I call it the point of endowment, which is how many franchises can you own and operate well before adding one more crumbles your empire. Okay, that's what I call the point of endowment. And so I talk to my clients about that. And so that is going to play into, but that also leads to my next sales and the next transactions. Because if I can bring you a client and tell you, listen, this person already has aspirations about X number of territories, locations, stores, whatever it is, we already know. And now it gets back to why an emerging brand with open territories and possibilities is so attractive. Right. So as we start, if I get somebody who's thinking that way, who wants to build their own empire, and they understand that that's not one location. Usually, it's generally multiples of 3, 6, 9, 12, so on, right? Then an emerging brand with open territory, that group, the number of those that exist is smaller. And so now all of those become very hyper-focused and of great interest, right? Because unless you want to go international and you want to do it here, then you got to get into an emerging brand, and you got to get into it sooner than later because it's emerging for a reason. And I'm having the same conversation with the person before you and the person after you.
Mhm.
And so when people say, how soon do I have to do this? Again, that's a question for the mirror, but here's the things that are true and undisputable. I am going to talk about this brand and the territories they have open with everybody until it's sold. That's my business. So however soon or slow you want to gamble within that is up to you.
Mhm.
And you hold territories. I personally cannot. These are questions. Right? I can't. You can have that conversation with the franchisor. They might, certainly if you put some money down, that'll change the conversation. But I can't answer that question for you.
I think you can see, clearly. What's that, Thomas?
That's a franchisor decision, right? That's your decision.
Right.
Whether you hold a territory or not. You're not going to hold it. I said so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, clearly you can see, what qualifies Thomas, right? If I'm going to buy a home and it's my forever home, I mean, it's an important purchase. It's up there. And buying a business is up there, right? It's top 3.
Yes.
And you want somebody qualified that understands the space. And my goodness, Thomas, you've had so much wisdom that you've shared. I really appreciate how gracious you've been with your time. I have most certainly appreciated this conversation. I feel like I could just chat with you, way beyond just this show. And thankfully we've had that opportunity. And but I wanted to wrap up. Clearly you're somebody that is obsessed with franchising. You've spent your career, on the franchisor side, franchise owner, and you're helping folks understand, what you love so much about franchising. So, Thomas, would you share, why do you love franchising so much?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, at this point, I've done it for more than half my life, right? And I've done it by choice. I haven't been forced. I've been blessed. I'm not overly religious. We're not going to go down that path, but I feel blessed. I feel very fortunate. And I'm happy it's been great to me, my wife, my family, and I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, and it always seems like there's every step of the way, there's always been another job within franchising that I could take or was recruited into, or it's always been there. It's always been wherever I needed it, wherever I've lived, whatever I've wanted to do. I've always been able to come back to franchising, find a career, not a job, right? You can find jobs anywhere, but find a career that I enjoyed and do it for years until another bigger franchise opportunity came along. And I don't know where else I could have done that. So for me, it has been the best fit.
And clearly you've landed at your biggest opportunity of impact, which is helping folks navigate such an important decision and investment in their life. I really commend you. You are truly qualified. Thomas, if anybody wants to get in touch with you to learn more and chat it up, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, that's kind of you to give me the ceremonious plug there. So you can reach me on my website, which is globalfranchisefinders.com. That's globalfranchisefinders.com. They can call me direct on my cell, which is not on the website, but I will share it with you here. It is area code 702, which is local for Las Vegas here in Nevada. 702-742-8751. That's 702-742-8751. Give me a call, mention Nick Lopez, mention the Level Up Show. Not that we'll take any better care of you than we would anyway, but I would love to find out that you heard about us here, because Nick has been a good friend to us, and we want to do the same for him.
Oh, that's awesome. Thomas, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My man, you're welcome, sir.
And, we grow because folks like you watching subscribe. We're trying to share as much information in the franchise space as possible. Clearly, this is a thought leader in franchising. By you subscribing, we're able to continue to grow and share valuable information. But more importantly, drop a comment down below, contribute to this dynamic conversation. We'd love to hear what you think. Smash the like button. And as always, level up.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Level Up with Nick Lopez show. Remember, it's never too late to get started on your entrepreneurial journey. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed today's segment. Catch us again next week and visit limepainting.com for more of the Level Up with Nick Lopez show.